So, welcome. Just to start with, you can say your name and say where are you now?
Right, well, I'm Dave Mann. Where am I now? Well, geographically, I'm located in Darley-Dale, which is a tiny place close to Matlock, between Matlock and Bakewell in the Peak District, Derbyshire, in the Midlands, which is an area of England that people struggle to find if they're from another country. So that's where I am geographically. As I sit here, I'm feeling quite curious, quite interested. I'm a bit nosy. Really, a lot of the qualities that surface for me in my work as a therapist, and a slightly wary as well, in case thinking I don't want to reveal too much, because in my work with clients and to some degree with my work with supervisees, I'm happy to reveal material, but more in response than as the relationship develops than over an internet search. So that's where I am. Yeah. So that's lurking around, a little wariness, a little caution as well. Yeah. And you might catch me dive down to my left side. It's because I've got my heater doesn't organismically regulate itself, so I have to switch.
Okay, so
I'm not having a stroke.
a quite nice description of the complexity of the here and now. I really like that. What I also had a thought when you said the Peak District. It's difficult to find, but once found, it's incredibly beautiful.
Yes, it is a beautiful part of the country, and it's a part of me, really. It's an important support for me, my immediate environment. In many ways, it's inconvenient because it means I travel a long way. I travel to my practice in ordinary times over the years. I've travelled a lot to cover a lot of miles, but the payoff is worth it, really.
And so the next question is a little bit broad, but you can take it anywhere you want. It is, who are you as a person?
Oh, well, it overlaps with the last question, really. Who am I as a person? I'm self as process, eh? I'm a cyclist. I'm a Gestalt therapist. I can go on. I'm a husband. There's these lists that I can of, I guess you would say, roles. So I'm a son and a stepfather and a grandfather, and as I say, there's all these different roles, but I'm fluid, I guess. Or try to be. Well, I probably don't try to be. If I try to be, I'm not fluid. So it's a paradox. yeah. So I'm vulnerable. And I sometimes try to adapt to more distantly than recently. So I try to adapt to what others want sometimes. I have done in my history anyway. I do that less and less as I get older, and hopefully wiser. And so and right now, what's more figural is my gestaltness. Really, my work as a gestalt therapist. I remember going into my training at the very beginning, and the trainer, it was Ian Greenway, my first trainer in 1989, and he said that Gestalt's a way of life, and And I railed against this. I thought, well, it's not going to be my way of life. And many years later, I would say it is. Yeah. So that's a brief answer to a very complex question, really. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was curious about the cycling because I saw the poster behind you and I was wondering if it has a story.
That does have a little story. Yeah, it's a climb in the Lake District. It's a very hilly area. It's not hilly compared with some countries, but it's short, sharp hills that are really, and that cycle. I don't know whether you can see it, but it says the struggle.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of.
Called the struggle. There's a climb called the struggle, and when I was in the Lake District, people said, "Oh, are you going up the struggle? Are you?" And I thought, no, I'm not going to go up that. And I ended up going up it by accident. I took a turn and went up it by accident. And so it's interesting. It's got a lot of meanings for me. I often see clients online or supervisees more online, and that's in the background. And it's a bit like how I found Gestalt. It's seemingly by accident. So so I found the struggle by accident as well. So I just turned the wrong way, and once I started, I couldn't stop.
And you did it without thinking to try to do it.
I was wobbling a lot. It's 20%, so it's very steep, very, very steep. It's quite well known in the area. Yeah, so that's and I did have a bit of a decision whether to, because I sometimes see clients online. Obviously, during COVID, I did. Oh well, during the during times in COVID, I did. And it's it reveals something, but it's an essential part of who I am, and so I have it in the background there. This is
And so, talking about these things, so you mentioned a plethora of things you are, but what do you think there are some core values that you hold them throughout all these roles and in your life?
I suppose I mentioned one being vulnerability, honesty, openness, and then there's probably core values, probably not core values, but interested in looking at the sort of like positive sides of sort of what might call shadow qualities. So so like what but that's what springs to mind really, is honesty, openness, vulnerability, prepared to be vulnerable.
I'm curious, do you mind saying more about that? Because vulnerability is talked a lot about today, but I guess I'm wondering what it means for you.
Okay, well, prepared to reveal as much as my clients are prepared to reveal, to match them really, and to lead with that sometimes. Likewise with supervisees in a different way, sometimes more relating to training and experiences, but still you can't separate therapy from supervision sometimes. I had got something else in my mind there, and it's just gone. So they stand out at this moment in time. Yeah.
Okay.
And we are vulnerable. I mean, I had a serious accident last year, and I was in hospital, and I recovered fully, but it really sort of like showed my vulnerability and fragility. So there's the physical vulnerability as well, really, as well as emotional, if you like, if we can separate those.
I personally sometimes find it amazing how fragile and strong at the same time we are as human beings.
Well, one end of you can't separate it from the other end of the.
No, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
You have mentioned that you had this accident, but are there some other events or set of circumstances that have shaped or impacted who you are now, and how? I know.
And if I said no, that would be a bit. No, that was the one event in my life. Nothing else.
Yes. Yeah.
I suppose. Well, I had. I did without going into a lot of detail. I prefer not to go into a lot of detail, but for the purposes of this, I had a serious illness when I was a child. That shaped my contact with the world, really, quite literally. How I walk, how I move, how I make contact with the world. So that's particularly significant. The way in which I perceive things. Yeah. So yeah, as I say, it's difficult to discuss. I don't want to discuss it in detail. I'm often happy to discuss it with clients when they ask, but not for the internet, I guess. Yeah. So yeah. But and I suppose that's why I leapt to vulnerability first. Rather, yeah. But attached to that, as you say, is strength, and it is. I do have a fierce determination, really. Sometimes too fierce. I do have a disability, and I've run marathons, and I've cycled long distances, and sometimes, particularly with some activities, I've probably pushed a little too far. But yeah. But broadly speaking, I'm quite happy with pushing like that. So yeah. I mean, I suppose at this point, I think I'm in some ways I'm quite rare as a psychotherapist, in that I had a good upbringing. Mum and dad were good, we were caring. They're very working class. My father was a telephone engineer. My mother was a mother and worked as a dinner lady in schools, and that shaped my work as well. Wanting to make Gestalt understandable to a wider audience. So that's and both in my work as a therapist, and also in my work as a writer and trainer. Yeah, so right across my work as a Gestalt therapist, really. So yeah. Yeah, and I was brought up in a loving family with 3 other brothers, and a very supportive wider family, aunts, uncles. We were known as the Mann clan.
Well, that is nice to have that field that supports you. Yeah.
Yeah. People used to say, "So many of you." Yeah. But we're all congregated fairly close by in Nottingham. Most of the family and extended family lived in Nottingham, which yeah.
Yeah, in today's day and age, it feels like a bit of privilege to have that closeness with the people that you have been living with.
Yes. Yeah. Today, yes. I suppose it was relatively rare then, but I am going back 45, 50 years, really. Yeah.
And so you talked about the Mann clan, but who are maybe other people that have impacted who you are as a human being?
Well, my wife is one, Karen. She comes to mind straight away. Yeah, my mother, my father, family members, my three brothers, the hospital staff that cared for me at the age of 6. So, of 5, sorry, not 6, and cared for me throughout my childhood. So, yeah, so they've been particularly significant in. And then there's because of the nature of a problem I experienced, I didn't do well at school. I But there was one English teacher that stands out. There's one English teacher that believed in me, and I did do well at English. I did do well at written English, and so he stands out, Mr. Parsons. Still, and my and I entered psychiatric nursing. There's psychiatric nurse tutors that stands out. There's people I fought in the health service to work as a Gestalt therapist in the health service that was still supportive, even though. And then there's my Gestalt trainers as well. So first Gestalt trainer was Ian Greenway, who was, so we just had him for the first year. There's a whole list after Ian, but a long list, and probably special mentions to people like well, Ken Evans was one trainer. Sally Denham Vaughan, I was deep, a good friend of mine. Malcolm Parts have had a big influence on me over the years. So there's a lot. I mean, there's too many to mention. Yeah.
And how did they form the Gestalt practitioner you are today? What were those impacts? I guess it's accumulation of many small impacts, but do you have something like high gravity events that you remember?
Well, in my training, or yeah. Well, high gravity event. There was one high gravity event at one of these old style beating up cushions, sort of Pearlsian type catharsis. Yeah, that during which I got so enthusiastic I broke my hand. So I learned something from that. Well, just broke one bone in my hand, but yeah, so that was a negative learning. But yeah, there's I mean, I suppose a big event for me was going over to do some training abroad well, I did some training I originally trained at the Sherwood Institute, which was a positive experience. I then went on to train at I then established my private practice, and before wanted to experience a different form of training, not better, but something that I saw as having a different strength. So I trained at Metanoia. I just APL'd, or whatever it's called nowadays, into their master's program, and I was already qualified. I was already registered, but I just did a year, and that was a really positive experience and really theoretically rigorous, but no regrets in doing that. And a further training that I undertook, I then assisted at Metanoia for some years with Sally Denham Vaughan, and then engaged in some training over in the States with Lynn Jacobs and Gary Yontef on the Pacific at the Pacific Gestalt Institute, and that was a great experience. It was residential training. I went something like 7 years running. So that was all sorts of people impacted me there, and we've crossed paths again since. Really, sort of Lynn was great. She put so much into that training. It's really really moving. So yeah, yeah. So that's yeah, yeah.
And now it's a little bit of a digression from this topic. Is how do you live or you experience your gender?
I've experienced myself as pretty male, really. Yeah, 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 yeah. I friends say friends have said for years, and that's probably before going back many years. So like before gender became so much in the public eye. But friends always said, "Oh, you've got a strong female side." And I've often worked in predominantly female environments. I mean, apart from my first job as a locksmith, which, yeah, upon leaving school, I worked, as I've worked in, as I said, began in psychiatric nursing, but I was I was one male in a large group of females, about like 16 females, and psychotherapy training. So Gestalt psychotherapy training is like that. Really, it's not quite that unbalanced, but it's that way. So yeah, so people have always fed back to me that I've got a strong female side, but I've always, I joke about beer and football and male things, but I enjoy my maleness actually. I enjoy being, yeah.
What about it? What is it that you like about that?
Gosh, this is such a difficult question, really. Yeah. Well, I go to sort of like, I guess I go to my aggression, really. It's like my ability to, that when I was talking about determination earlier, I think it's, I don't mean aggression as in I mean it more in the sort of like Gestalt sense, aggression on the environment. And I enjoy doing activities that you would predominantly, and I know it's a dangerous thing to generalize like this, but to things that are male activities and male company. Part of that is because I've spent a lot of time with female company. So, I engage in woodland management, and I quite enjoy a chainsaw in my hand, and it's a good release from it's good release, physical, the physical activity, something that's aggressive in that sense, really. Yeah.
And now going from the gender to age, and how are you experiencing your age?
I can't believe I'm 64, really. People start talking about, well, in my cycling group, people say, are you going to retire soon, Dave? And I say, I think, what are you talking about? Of course I'm not. It's so, but I suppose that question comes in. So that's I've got friends that are similar age to me, that are retired or about to retire. I suppose the question comes in, but I give it a firm no. I'm not going to. But that's one experience I'm having, and no, and my bones ache sometimes more than they used to. yeah, my muscles ache more. They used to take longer to heal. Just before we met, I said I'd cut my lip. I'm actually on some medication that means my blood doesn't clot very quickly. So it was still bleeding just before we met. So there's things like yeah, you are talking about vulnerability. There's you just that little bit more vulnerable, or I'm that little bit more vulnerable, really. Yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong, I'm not at the doctor's all the time, but similarly, I think my life's. I feel as though my life's improved with each decade. Really, I look at it and in my each decade, I think that was better than the decade before, and everything's contained different things. I'm not sure whether this decade's better than my 60s is better than my 50s, but I'm enjoying it in a different way. So yeah, life's there to be enjoyed. So yeah, I don't know when it's going to end. So as none of us do. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, so going back to childhood, I could have died then. There's a very real possibility that I could, and I think that's left me like broadly speaking, valuing every day really, with broadly speaking again with quite an optimistic outlook. So yeah, yeah.
And I'm curious, did that event and that what you experienced give you a sort of maturity in life afterwards, or you felt like you continued to be and going with your peers at the time who have not experienced similar things?
Yeah. Initially, I think it gave me. Ultimately, it probably has done, but initially it was probably the opposite. I was quite immature in my early 20s. Well, probably late teens. But more recently, yes, or over the years, I think it has done. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And now the question is, how do you experience privilege and power in your life, if you do in any way?
Well, I certainly do. I'm saying I'm living in this particular location. It's a beautiful part of the country. It's a choice I have. It's a privilege I have. I can choose to live in this environment, and it's a beautiful large house. I'm privileged to have two healthy step kids with 3 healthy grandkids, and a mother and father, as I've already said, that were very caring. That's the greatest privilege, really, is having such a solid ground to build upon. Really, that's the greatest privilege I've had. Not any wealth I've built up, not as I'm particularly wealthy, but I'm comfortable, which is a privilege. I'm white. That gives, although I'm uncomfortable in saying it, that gives me an advantage. I'm disabled. That gives me a disadvantage, and has done in the past. Yeah, yeah. So not so much in my experience in the therapy world, but yeah. Yeah, there is a bit of a mix, because I was a lot of Gestalt therapists I've met have had what you could say was a better education than me. But likewise, I've sort of like, but well, early education, I should say, but I made up for that later on. So I found a good education later on. So as talking about my psychotherapy trainings. So yeah, but I mean, I ran a couple of workshops, BSc, earlier this month, and on both workshops there were two black trainees, and we had a group process, and the issue of race really came up at a felt level. I feel emotional talking about this now, and they said they were talking about racism, and they said, and one guy, gorgeous guy, he said, I face this every day. I face this every single day on the bus, at the bus stop, so in the city. And I thought, I just don't know what that's like. I thought that is, I am privileged to have white skin in this country. Yeah. And speak with a English accent. Yeah. Likewise, there was an Irish woman who shared prejudice that she'd encountered because of her accent. A lovely woman, lovely and open on the workshop, and again, I was really moved by that. Yeah. So yeah, I'm privileged because of the way I speak, because I also do quite a lot of work in Slovenia and other countries, but and speaking English is quite a privileged position, because I don't need to learn Slovene, and I'm lazy. I get lazy with languages. Yeah, and a lot of conferences I attend, so like people struggle with English, struggle to speak English, and I guess you know about that. Yeah, so yeah. Whereas I don't speak another language, and so that's a privilege too. Something I can feel a tinge of shame about, frankly.
I actually had a friend who is Asian, and she was explaining her experience in New Zealand to me, and it was also very difficult for me to understand how is it to be looked at constantly when one is passing, going about their everyday life. So I do understand that. But then the interesting thing is, when I come to the UK and I fill in forms, I'm other white.
Right, otherwise.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting thing that even there is a scale of whiteness as well, apparently.
Where are you from, Alexandra?
I'm from Serbia.
Serbia. All right.
Yeah. And now we're going to switch towards the questions about Gestalt. So you briefly mentioned a little bit things around Gestalt, but how did you actually come into Gestalt therapy?
Oh, that was interesting. I was working in psychiatry. I was working for in a multidisciplinary team in a community setting, and I'd done some training in person-centered therapy. Even back then, cognitive CBT or behavioural therapy was around, and I'd done some training in behavioural therapy. And I thought, and I was living in Sherwood, and just around the corner there was an institute that had just started, and they were running a Gestalt groups. And I thought, it's therapy groups, this is. And I thought, it'd be interesting to go into a therapy group that I know nothing about, and have no intention of finding anything about. So 1980, get a guess, I would say 1986, maybe 85. I wandered around. I wandered literally. It was around the corner. It was to this therapy group, and I got really interested, and 4 years later, I was enrolling to do my training. So I always say it's like I didn't find Gestalt, but Gestalt found me. But it's probably not quite right, because we found each other. We met.
Yeah.
We met in that space between, quite
Yeah.
literally, really.
It's very dialogical always.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So
Yeah.
that's yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I'm curious, this question was sitting with me even before. What attracted you? So you said you were a psychiatric nurse.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what attracted you to that helping profession or working in psychiatry?
Quite a naive sort of attraction, really. I want to save the
Mhm.
world, really. So, or at least a corner of it. Yeah, well, seriously, it was quite naive in some way. But
Mhm.
as I say, I was working with locks. There's only so much you can find out about locks. And I was bored, for one thing. I wanted to work with people, and
Mhm.
uh, I wanted to work in a helping profession. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, but that surfaced, and I moved towards it, and had no regrets whatsoever. I loved that work.
Mhm.
I loved the work with the clients, the patients. Um, yeah, so like I, I was I was really interested in how people made sense. Once I was there, I was really interested in how people made sense of their world. Really,
Mhm.
people with serious what might call psychotics conditions, like delusions, hallucinations. But I was just fascinated by this, and and wanted to understand, really. So I was really
Mhm.
drawn to understanding how they could make, not from a sort of like spectating point of view, but and appreciating that that was their reality and mine was
Mhm.
my reality. And I think I started, in some ways, I think I was practicing as a Gestalt therapist before I knew anything about Gestalt.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just I was sitting with people, and trying to understand how they saw the world.
Mhm.
Basically, I was engaging in I was practicing dialogue and phenomenology.
Phenomenology.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. How they reached out and made sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and appreciating that, really, rather than trying
Yeah.
to change it. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
that's a thing that I'm actually very curious about. How is it uh why is it that we have a pull to change these things? Because obviously it is within a lot of us that
yeah,
when we encounter someone with a completely different reality, there is this like, but you need to look into mine. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm curious. It seems that you had something like that naturally, that curiosity
yeah,
to
yeah.
not change it. But is there something that one can do actively, or that you have done actively to calm, to center, and then to be able to listen to that world?
Yeah. Well, actively, it's time, it's commitment, it's with. There's one man I was working with. He would be diagnosed as having paranoid schizophrenia. He got florid delusions, hallucinations. Didn't Half the time he didn't take his medication, um, and I felt really committed to this man. And I mean, I spent the first year chasing him, quite literally, really. Not well, sort of. So, I mean, finding out where he was and going off in my car and like seeing if his mother had seen him, and eventually we'd sit down in his one bedroom flat, and we'd engage in conversations, and over a period of around 7 years, I was working with this man can name him, is John. His first name John. His delusions, his hallucinations, which were, I mean, he believed he got the devil on his back, and he and was getting messages from the devil, and really, and command hallucinations, command auditory hallucinations, telling him to kill himself, or but we'd talk, and we would talk about ordinary stuff a lot of the time. But just like commitment in a relationship, those symptoms were less disturbing. I think that was a huge factor. Really, there was medication. He began to trust me, and the old saying about with people that are paranoid, once you're in for life. I was in for life. We were, I still feel moved by him. Now that's some 25 years ago, really. So it was this, the word relational is overused these days, but it was the relationship that held, well, I was going to say, helped hold him together. You know, he was sort of like, it's like that picture about the glue and the solvent, like that you might know. It's like he was fragmented, and you needed glue. You needed to stick the bits together rather than catharsis or some experiment to what's the Peirlesian saying? Oh, it's gone out my head. Disintegrate to integrate. Well, we didn't need that. We needed to we needed glue. So yeah. So,
I mean, I must just share, I'm moved by you sharing the story, and I can imagine the movement that has impacted you.
And some of it is really quite ordinary. You just have to be ordinary with people. You don't have to be smart. I say this to trainees, to supervisees, and so many people try to take 3 steps, 4 steps, where there's a step earlier. So take 1 step rather than 4. If you know what I mean. It's like
I think this was one of the biggest learnings from my training, is when I saw my colleagues being human first. I think that's really what moved me, that humanness, basically. And now talking about the let's say the aspects of Gestalt practice, what are the ones that most attracted you to stay in it for, well, I don't know even how long?
1989, you can do the maths.
About 31,
1985 or 6 if you include the therapy group. So
since that's my age, that's 32.
What are the aspects of Gestalt? Well, there's different aspects at different points, I guess. But it's quite interesting. I mean, to start with, I think I was attracted by the drama. I was involved in drama groups. I've been involved in drama groups at various times earlier on in my life, and I was attracted by the drama initially, but that wouldn't have been enough to hold me. Just as the drama groups didn't hold me, I got bored after a while and left. But I can remember beginning my training, and I was looking at all those years ago, and I can remember sort of reading a number of books, PhD, well, trying to read it or pretending I understood it at that point. Zinker's book was around, and I was thinking, am I in the right place? Is this the training I need to do? And then Yontef's book came out in 1993, and it grabbed me, and I thought, I feel quite emotional saying this actually. It's like I thought I'm in the right place. This man's speaking to me. Yeah, yeah. That's awareness, process, and dialogue, and I'm never quite sure whether I've got those in the right order even now. But yeah. So that was the book that grabbed me really. Yeah. So yeah. So that's when I knew I wanted to be a Gestalt therapist. Mm. Mm. Mm.
And what was your involvement in Gestalt therapy, theory, practice? So up to now, what have you contributed to the Gestalt?
Well, I've seen lots of people in psychiatry. So to start with, I've seen people that wouldn't ordinarily have been able to access Gestalt therapy. That was quite important. Then, after leaving the British National Health Service, so like I saw people from sort of like work programs alongside my private practice. So a lot of clinical work, and then I've moved more towards supervising, and I've been a bit I get a bit disturbed sometimes with the length of time people spend training. I think that people can qualify and practice adequately and safely without doing sort of a training that goes into double figures in terms of years. So I don't think you have to be the finished article when you finish your training or anything close to it. We're always developing. So I feel a bit of a mission to sort of like to encourage people to complete their training, and with that in mind, I'm running case study workshops in Slovenia, and helping people with their final vivas and the like to get them through that marker really. So and of course well, I was going to say recently. It's now probably it was 2008 when I started writing. But so I've been writing. I've written a book. I've updated the book completely as well. So I like to say I've written two books. The second edition was completely different to the first, really. And I've written several articles and co-written several articles on working with suicide or suicidal clients. So, have I really done all that? So I think as I sit here. So yeah, and I still do quite a lot of work in a working week, really. Yeah, and I'm grateful for the support I get with that as well. Yeah, my wife's very supportive of me in my work. Yeah. She complains sometimes that I'm not around, but yes, but she is supportive. Yeah.
And then I think this is kind of making a complete Gestalt, because you said now you're living the Gestalt life, but how has Gestalt and Gestalt therapy affected you as a person?
How's it affected me as a person? Well, I can't really separate out how it's affected me from a person as how it's affected me as a practitioner, really. It's I find it a difficult question to ask to answer, really. I've gone a bit blank right now. So
I'm guessing like what I would ask about this is more like, what is a Gestalt life like, and how did your training help you to have it living through in daily life?
well, I'd say I'd well, yeah, I'd say primarily balance. I think balance in my life, and sometimes I think trainings can be a bit unbalanced in some ways. In that we work within university systems uh, and uh, and have to read a lot and submit essays by certain dates, and there isn't much space for support. And the important thing is to when the training ends is to not continue that habit. I
Yeah.
did continue the habit. I felt my trainings were positive, but I overworked when I'd finished. I continued sort of like filling the hours with work. So really it's take a step back and then look at the balance. And as you say, that there's one of my balances, quite literally on two wheels. But as mentioned, like woodland management earlier, and we've got a large garden, and these are all there's my family. These are all aspects of achieving balance for me, and that's what Gestalt is about for me. We talk about organismic regulation, but that's yeah, sometimes sounds a little bit individualistic sometimes. So yeah, but we need to regulate ourselves in relation to our environment. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
actually quite I had a lived experience starting with my training that we are training therapists for self-support, yet
yeah,
that's not modeled in our trainings, and not
yeah,
necessarily by the fault of any of the trainers. I fully understand that it's the system, but
yeah,
then
yeah.
I'm just always very curious of how can we impact that and like that two-way street of communication.
That's a good
But I'm
question.
glad that you mentioned. I'm really glad that you mentioned, because it is really my life, my lived experience.
Yes, 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 yeah, yes, a lot, yeah, yeah, there's a lot of trainees experience, really. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
and I think it does. I think it probably does. It does need to change. Just
mm,
we need to do something about that. Not just to accept the Gestalt's whole history is rebellious.
yeah.
Uh, we I think we're just like are we going a little bit too mainstream? Are we
Mm,
going? We want to belong, but then when we sort of like get invited into something, we seem to kick out and say, "No, we don't quite want to belong." So
mm,
so I just wonder about that, really. Where do we want to live, really? In a university system or outside of one? Or yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Well, are they the only two choices, really?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah,
wondering
yeah.
as
I
well.
doubt it. I doubt it.
And then, do you feel like you're a part of a Gestalt community?
Yeah, yes, I do. I do most of the time. I've gone through various phases
Mm-hmm.
in my career where I felt a part and then not a part of a community. Um, I think the community I feel there's different parts of the community I feel connected with, really. Um, there's been times when the Sherwood Institute don't deliver Gestalt training anymore and haven't done for many years. But there was a time where I felt part of that community, that Gestalt community. Then they stopped training Gestalt therapists, just concentrated on integrative training. So I felt a little less a part of that community, and then gradually felt a bit out on my own. I felt part of a community when I was both training and assisting, and did some teaching at Metanoia. That's well, just 1 minute. My emails have popped across. Sorry. That's it. I just need to close them down. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah, so I felt a part of a community there. I'm involved with a training in Wales with Anne Pettit at the present, and I feel a part of that community when I'm invited in, and that's currently. So yes, and and I've got some good support, good supervision group that I've my own supervision, and I've actually just come from contact with a sort of peer supervision just now, actually. So yeah, so there's those pockets really. Yeah, there's I've missed. I didn't think I'd say this, but I've missed the conferences since the face-to-face meeting. You know, the flesh is. I like the word Merleau-Ponty uses, flesh of the situation. So like the just meeting people, and a lot surfaced from conferences for me. Just in the meeting of people, so like mainly around workshops. It's more in the when we're having coffee and meals really that things surface. But that's what I miss. Yeah, you would say it's I think of it as social contact, but it's more. I suppose it's technically it might be networking, but I never think of it in that through that lens. Yeah, but yeah, that's some of the the wider sort of like community in Europe or further afield, really. So I've missed that over the last 2 years. Yeah.
And do you feel like there is a world community, or it's a forming world community at the moment?
I'd say it's primarily a Western world community, but having said that, there's Eastern Europe. There's areas that I'm not so aware of, but I was recently told by Routledge that they'll be translating my book into Chinese. So I can't say I'm aware of a huge interest in Gestalt in China, but I guess if Routledge are going to print a load of books in Chinese, there must be a market there. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, there are communities around the world, but of course, there's areas of the world where that we haven't touched. I mean, I'm not just talking about Africa, but there's and ones we don't particularly engage with a lot, like Brazil, as quite a yeah that I don't have a lot of contact with. Yeah. So there are communities around the world that are mainly Western world that I have, with the exceptions of Eastern Europe. But yeah, but yeah, there's certainly interest surfacing in several areas that I don't know whether it's new interest or it's new to my awareness, and that's India, Pakistan. Just prior to COVID, I was going to be going over to Pakistan with a colleague to deliver some training. So yeah. So there's emerging possibilities there. Yeah.
And then you mentioned that there've been waves in your Gestalt therapy journey. And what would you say have been your most challenging moments related to therapy and or Gestalt?
My most challenging moments as a therapist, or as a
Or in the
or
Gestalt
period?
community, well, you can answer both.
I think the most challenging moments must be when meeting with somebody with a level of distress that clients I'm thinking of, client work are probably the most challenging moments still. Yeah, so like there's been challenging moments in trainings, supervision. Yeah, but it centers on people at risk, really. So like people at risk to self, at risk to others, um, assessing that. Yeah, they're and I guess that's why I've written some of the chapters I've written working around with working with suicidal people. So I think they're the most challenging moments. I'm very firm with people that want to commit suicide generally, so or have intent, should I say? Or but that's that's the most challenging area for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
Uh,
then
mm,
in terms of polarities,
yeah.
what are your greatest memories in your Gestalt journey?
Well, gosh, what's the greatest memories? Well, it's the you'll get my greatest memories at this moment. Really, it's just as you got my. Yeah, that's probably the client. The yes, you'll get my greatest memories in this moment because as soon as this interview's ended, I'll think of some others.
Something else.
Yeah. Oh, I think going over to the States for the first time for the workshop with Lynn Jacobs, Gary Yontef, and Frank Stamler it was a big significant move for me. That was and the group that I was in there was we know some very senior trainers from Australia and around the world. So that was quite as apart from just visiting the States and sort of like bumming around Santa Barbara and things, you know. So like that was a lovely memory. But as I was saying about it's some of the greatest moments have been when the clients that I was talking about earlier that have been so distressed have then journeyed to a place where they're where they're functioning well, they're contented, they've moved to over years they've moved to a very different way of being, really. I remember my I remember one of my dissertation clients was I met her in a psychiatric. Well, I didn't meet her actually. I saw her. I saw her in passing in a psychiatric day unit that I was working. I was working in part time at that time, and so I saw her. And she was a psychiatric patient. I worked with her for it's probably 8 or 9 years. A delightful woman, and she moved from and she was at the end of our therapy, she was working as a qualified UKCP registered Gestalt psychotherapist. And that's moving. Yeah, yeah. She'd shifted from fragmenting following her divorce, really, that she collapsed, and to being self-supported. Yeah, yeah, and working well as a Gestalt therapist. Yeah, yeah, I've journeyed through whole training. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I'm amazed by is people who are working in therapy witnessing these beautiful transformations. Of course, a lot of difficulty, but also witnessing a lot of the resilience that lies within human beings. And thank you for sharing this, because it is a testimony.
Sometimes it's having the belief in the person. And that's probably my history, really. Is I spoke earlier of the English teacher, you might recall, Mr. Parsons. I don't. He had belief in me. He made a big difference. He's probably indirectly, he's probably responsible for me writing that book. You know, so, I might not have done it without him. And if as therapists we can believe that clients can change, and sometimes we need to hold the belief before they can.
Also believing that we are capable of bigger things that we ourselves think we are.
Yes. Not so sure about that one. I just sort of like go with the flow. Things seem to happen.
So
I'm playing.
No, it's good.
Humor is quite important for me in therapy. Humor is important for me in therapy. And my life. Not as a deflection. I'm interested in how humor connects.
Exactly.
Too often it's spoken about as a deflection, but it's how humor can connect.
Actually, 2 weeks ago, I went to a workshop on humor, and I'm going to have a course on humor in therapy.
Oh, are you?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
I don't think I need a course.
No, exactly. I just wanted to say that you have it in you, so you can give the course.
Oh, well, I was playing again.
Okay, so the last question is, what is next for you and for Gestalt therapy as you see it?
What's next for me and for Gestalt therapy? Right, can I take them one at a time? What's next for me? COVID's been an interesting time. I know I'm going back before I go forward. But it's been an interesting time with COVID in lots of different ways. But it's meant that I've made some significant changes. I've stopped my practice that was in Nottingham for 20 odd years. So I've stopped that practice. I've closed that practice. I'm still practicing in Birmingham, and I'm still practicing from my home. But that's COVID sort of like was the spark that led to that, really. What next? Well, one thing that's next is there was a proposal for another book. Gestalt Therapy: The Basics is a book that's aimed at people with very little knowledge or no knowledge, with just curiosity of Gestalt. So that's definitely on the horizon. I just had an email back about the proposal today, so that's certainly something that's may well be next. I'll continue with my practice. I'll continue to write, and I've got some ideas for writing. I think there's room for books on like ordinary therapy, with sort of titles that are jangling around for me. Ordinary therapy with extraordinary people, something like that. So there's there's some writing that's next. Yeah, and I want to. It'll be influenced by Gestalt, but I think there's a novel in me somewhere. Yeah. So so that's some of the next for me. With all the uncertainty around that, what's next for Gestalt? I think Gestalt will grow from Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe is growing quite a rate, from where I sit. Yeah, I think there's room for it to grow further, and not just in Eastern Europe. There's some there's some wonderful work coming out of Italy from Gianni Franceschetti and the usual names. Yes, yeah. So I think Gestalt will grow. This country, I feel a bit uncertain about Britain with Gestalt. I think it's the movement towards a more such an individualistic view in Britain. Really, I hope we can. I think we'll have pockets, but I think it will be pockets. Really, I can't. I think this would be a long journey to move to like getting some back to as we were in the 70s, 80s, really. So and I think really for Gestalt to flourish, we need to get back to our rebellious roots. Really, I think that's what we need to do. Yeah, not to adapt. Yeah. So that's essentially it. Yeah. Whether we feel supported enough to do that. One nice thing about getting older is I'm not so bothered about who I upset.
Yeah. Many people who are older.
But strangely, I don't feel I don't go around upsetting many people. So it's I'm just more truer to myself, really. Yeah, without thinking, without going through a long process of who does this person know, where's this going to lead, and so on. Yeah. So
Okay.
That answers your question.
I actually really like your answer, and I have to say, after the end of the interview, I have more questions which will not be part of this. But for the end, I'm curious. Is there something we haven't asked you but you want to share in relation to Gestalt or to your story?
I'm sure there is, but I can't think of anything right now. I mean, they've been quite broad questions. I've only been able to give a narrow answer to each, really. So there's a lot more to me and to Gestalt and to me in relation to Gestalt than but we've scratched the surface, and I appreciate you doing this. It's yeah.
I appreciate you accepted the invitation, because I was really amazed by the humbleness of your writing. That was really the biggest impression from reading the book. So I was very, very curious to see the person behind the book. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, it's been good to meet you.
Okay.
Alexandra.
Likewise.
Yeah.